In the distant realm of Baltimore, where I grew from boy to man, my PlayStation 1 cried out for new games. Would I venture forth into the Wumpa Islands and play Crash Bandicoot? No, for the grinning, sneering doofus offended my delicate sensibilities. How dare the naughtiest of dogs create this tangerine Sonic the Hedgehog whilst we waited forever for Sonic Extreme. I still have not played Crash Bandicoot, and I defiantly never will. Thumbing through a video game magazine in 1996, 14 years old and desperate for more mature games to reflect my growing body, I searched for opportunities to play as the bad guy. No longer would I be satiated by plunging Boss Turtle into the red water. I'm in high school, I reminded myself. I'm Boss Turtle now. I found my immature edginess quenched by 2 games, Tecmo's Deception and Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. Within both compact disc entertainment circles contained the objects of my thirst. The former, a double switchian trap game in a dark fantasy setting, and the latter, a Zelda-like in a dark fantasy setting. I acquired them both, but played Blood Omen first. Now, in the distant realm of Nosgoth, the land cries out for a hero, the sky cries out for redemption, and the people cry out for soap, probably, filthy and gross, in this plague-stricken heck hole. Only the vampire Kain can restore the pillars of Nosgoth and bring balance to this dark fantasy setting, but therein lies the obstacle. I love dark fantasy settings. I mean, come on, you think I'm gonna bring balance to Nosgoth? It's called Nosgoth. What if I bring just all that balance? Big heaping piles of balance. And it's not gothic anymore. Then what? Then what am I playing? The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past? I already played that. It was good. This is Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain. Drink deep from the chalice of badness, and let's go on a murder vacation.
There is a magical operation of maximum importance. The initiation of a new aeon. When it becomes necessary to utter a word, the whole planet must be bathed in blood.
When I was a teenager, I was embarrassingly clueless about what this meant, mistakenly assuming that this was related to the game I was about to play, marching through the forests of Nosgoth, felling dark creatures, desperately searching for this magical operation, and even more importantly, the word I was meant to utter. It's from Aleister Crowley's book Magic, Book 4. I just didn't know it at the time. The creators of Blood Omen simply chose not to cite Crowley, which is strange because boasting that you know the works of Aleister Crowley is like goth kid street cred times infinity. For the record, I was not a goth in high school. I was only the more mundane form of depressed. After a few snippets of the crunchiest computer-generated cutscenes, our boy Kain is sent out of the tavern, the most consequential closing time of his life.
I stay open for no man in these dark times. Things come with the night that no sane man would welcome. And so I left, cold of heart and soul, forced to the road and the long, bitter night.
Kain is jumped by 8 identical men. In a subversion of my expectations, the player character is immediately owned. The first battle is unwinnable. An unwinnable encounter in a video game serves a number of purposes: narrative, world building, or mechanical. The player discovers their limitations and is later rewarded by facing the same challenge later in the game, now winnable, to show the passage of time and the progression of the character. In Mega Man X, the first boss, Vile, can't be beaten. Nothing doing. Suddenly, we are introduced to a robot with superior fighting prowess, Zero, the coolest dude that the Robo Future has to offer. We don't know much about Zero right away, but through this unwinnable encounter we know that Zero is the kind of robot that X needs to be in order to defeat Vile later in the game. Blood Omen is a little different. It's not only the first boss who is unbeatable, it's the first fight. This sets the tone for the dark and unforgiving adventure through Nosgoth. Kain barely has a chance to vey his Victus before he is super murdered.
Vey Victus, suffering to the conquered. I didn't care if I was in heaven or hell. All I wanted was to kill my assassins.
Kain, if you can't tell if you're in heaven or hell right now, I have some literature that you may be interested in reading. Kain wakes up in his crypt, has a snack, and begins his quest for vengeance. That's what all my mornings are like too. Can we talk about this sound effect? What a great sound effect. Voice acting, high-quality music tracks, sound effects that transcend the beeps and boops of the past. I felt like the future was now, and the future sounded like a soul leaving the body. By the time Blood Omen was released, CD game consoles were becoming more standard, but home consoles with compact disc drives had existed for a long time prior. The CD-ROM expansion for the PC Engine, or TurboGrafx 16, jacked up the turbo to heights heretofore unseen. The PC Engine was released in 1987 and its CD drive released in 1988. It simply did not have the mainstream staying power to standardize this format. Amiga, Philips, and Sega all tried with varying levels of breakthrough failure. It was no wonder Nintendo thought it could keep cartridges going indefinitely. Sega tried again with the Saturn a year before the PlayStation, but where Sega tripped, Sony sprinted. I want to hear Kain shout Vey Victus in stunning CD audio quality, over and over and over again.
Vey Victus! Vey Victus!
About 10 minutes into the game, and maybe 5 after Kain is resurrected, he gets his revenge. Bloody and sweet. Blood Omen once again subverts the player's expectations. The Necromancer Mortanius hypes up Kain's revenge like it's gonna be the whole game, but nope. Kain has been tricked into thinking that's why he has been remade as Nosferatu, the undead. And the player just goes along with this secret plot all the way through the game. Kain is not only an anti-hero, but a pawn. He is not in control of what's happening to him throughout the entire game. He has agency and thoughts and motivations, sure, but he is a piece of a grand design by more powerful entities than himself. I'll spare you the complete spoilers, but for now, I love the blood in Blood Omen. I love it so much! If the blood had been bad in Blood Omen, it would be all we talk about. We would say, how could a game called Blood Omen have such bad blood effects? It would be like when a band or a filmmaker calls their project something that makes it easy to mock in the reviews of said project, but not this time. No, Blood Omen got that blood. Look at this. You cut up a guy or you bludgeon him with something to make him dizzy, you press circle, and instead of doing the thing that every other vampire has done since the dawn of time, that would be hazardous to vampires by the way, Kain uses hemokinesis to get that blood real quick up in his mouth hole. Fantastic addition to vampire lore. As a game mechanic, it's an elegant and aesthetically pleasing solution to a more technical problem. Without this, gameplay would slow down to a baby's crawl. Imagine if Kain had to get up close to his foe every time. That would be fine for one-on-one instances, sure, but it would overcomplicate and aggravate every instance of multi-enemy combat throughout the game. It's risky, and that's part of the combat calculus. If you're fighting multiple enemies and your blood health meter is running on empty, do you get some distance and leave yourself vulnerable for about a second and then jump back into the fray, fully blooded and ready to get fantasy medieval on their asses? Because if they hit you while you're sucking one down real hard, you still get the blood, but it washes around in the air before it lands in your gob, and now you've taken a little damage in your effort to heal your damage. Some of the combat in Blood Omen is a teeny bit broken, because there are so many enemies and so many circumstances in which you can practically hide right in front of them but outside of their collision detection, and just go absolutely buck wild on their pixels. But the blood thing is great. 10 out of 10 blood sucking. You can practically hear the developers speaking every time Kain starts drinking his victims through his magic invisible straw. They're saying, "Okay, Silicon Knights, form a round table and listen up. We need a practical, gameplay-focused method of Kain replenishing his health that won't ruin the combat, and we're not going home until we figure this one out. And someone with some serious creative game brain spoke up and said, what if vampires in our vampire game could snack on that blood remotely? And everyone turned to see whether or not Dennis Dyack thought it was a good idea or not, and then he slowly but triumphantly stood up from his throne and said, I am surrounded by genius. I, Dennis Dyack, will never make a bad game. And that's why the Blood and Blood Omen is so delicious. Besides Blood Omen, I wonder what's like the top 10 blood in video games. I wonder what that list would look like. This is not most blood or most disgusting blood, just, my personal faves that deserve shoutouts. No criteria, only vibes. Number 10, No More Heroes. Travis Touchdown cuts off some nameless loser's head with a lightsaber, and a fountain of blood and money volcanoes out of his neck, allowing us to ponder the connection between the violence that surges across the world and those who profit from it. Also, it looks cool. Number 9. The blood in the kitchen in Maniac Mansion right next to the chainsaw that does nothing. Look, I remember playing the NES version of this game and being like, there's blood in this game? You can have blood in a video game? And can I have more? Number 8. That one part in Phantasmagoria where that thing swings down and annihilates this dude's entire world. Number 7. Doom 2, but specifically when the Mancubus dies. It's really graphic, but I also feel like I'm putting him out of his misery because otherwise he would have to live the rest of his days as something called a Mancubus. Number 6. Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition. It's not simply the blood itself, but the creative blood explosions that Bulletstorm not only permits, but encourages. Thank you for that, Bulletstorm. I will play the Duke Nukem version of this game someday. Number 5. Mad World. Platinum Games, future developer of Nier Automata, made an ultra-violent Wii game featuring the voice of comedian Greg Proops from Whose Line Is It Anyway? But that's not the most shocking thing about the game. It's the blood. Obviously, it's the blood. That's what this list is about. The black and white game is colorized only when the red of the blood springs forth, emphasizing it beyond its normal vermilion grossitude. Number 4. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. The fuck is this doing here? Number 3. Hotline Miami. Sure, it's just the same spray of graphic pixels every time, but doesn't Hotline Miami deserve some recognition through sheer volume by cubic liter alone? Number 2. In modern Fallout games, exploding someone into chunks, neatly packed chunks, it's always great. We can knock the modern Fallout games for overemphasizing combat over talking, but can we not also consider the chunks? I will give the nod to New Vegas even though the chunks be similar across recent Fallouts because I just like this game more. Number 1. In Mortal Kombat 2, when Reptile eats his opponent's entire head meat off the bone, there is a perfect blood bubble that pops off impossibly out of the neck hole like a red moon. Look to Blood Luna. Although Baraka's fatality also gets that sanguine spheroid, I feel like Reptile wins the whole thing. Not because the blood circle is different, it's the exact same circle, but the greater context of Reptile eating his head and then rubbing his tummy heightens the sensation. Sometimes it's not the blood, but the universe that swirls around it. I sent Kain back to the scene of his untimely demise and found that his true revenge against the bartender was still out of reach. I sent him on his merry way to the Pillars of Nosgoth. Each pillar needed to be restored to save the world. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain is a Zelda-like, and these pillars and the tokens needed to repair them are the Triforce.
The 9 of the Protectors of Hope were sworn to use their powers to preserve our world. Now these pillars have been corrupted by a traitor.
If the voice of Ariel is not immediately recognizable, that's Anna Gunn, Skylar White from Breaking Bad, who was right the whole time, sorry. Blood Omen has so many options menus to contend with. There's the transformation menu that shapeshifts Kain into a wolf, mist, human, or bat, but the bat transformation doesn't actually make him do bat stuff in the action of the game. It's fast travel, but stylized as one of Kain's dark gifts. There's the item quick menu, but nearly all items are weapons. Items in this game are pick-upable doodads. There's the magic quick menu, Each spell drains magical energy on the right. Then there's the inventory main menu in which the items and magic spells for the items and magic quick menus are chosen. The inventory menu also selects the primary weapon and armor, but there is no quick menu like the player has for the items, spells, and transformations. There were only so many buttons on the PlayStation controller. This sounds like a real pain in the ass, but it was nothing like the ass pain of playing through this game with the ungodly loading times on the PlayStation. I'm playing Blood Omen right now through game preservation software and overclocked it so I didn't have to deal with the loading times. It is a blessing. The boss battles in Blood Omen shake up the combat and include yet another unwinnable battle against Malik. This man just doesn't want to die. How selfish! Speaking of bosses, Mortanius is played by Tony J. Claude Frollo himself from The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
You have but one purpose, damned warrior. You will serve us for eternity.
What an amazing cast! Remember the 90s when major actors appearing in video games were basically seen as slumming it? Hearing recognizable voices in Blood Omen in 1996 was a revelation. That's the same year Hunchback was in theaters. In Blood Omen, there are 3 forms of townspeople with only the mildest of variations. The first is the townsperson who will attack Kain, but these are not armored knights or dangerous assassins. A townsperson who attacks Kain is usually a woman in a dress who just kinda smacks him in the face. The second is someone just walking back and forth, not resisting, not reacting to a vampire, and if you kill one, the others do not run away. No, these are not people. These are items in human form. The third is a villager who is just literally sleeping there and subject to quick and easy bloodsucking. More convenient than a Taco Bell drive-thru at 1 a.m. I don't know what this woman in the yellow dress is doing. I can't seem to hit her. I can vanquish this man over here in one strike, but she's stuck trying to pass through this pile of rubble like the Flash vibrating through walls. A spell workaround gets me her blood. That's better. That's more like it. This puzzle right here, might be my favorite puzzle in all of video games. I play Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, I don't know, every 10 years. One of my favorite games from the 90s, but not something I replay annually. Every time, without fail, I forget the solution to this puzzle. Kain needs to find his way to the other side, but some tiles will teleport him back to the start, and I think, okay, let's use the light spell so I can see where I'm going, but doing this is what seals my fate. What I actually need to do is not use the light spell and allow myself to wander in the dark. In doing this, the path opens itself up, and I never teleport back to the beginning. It's an Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade puzzle, a leap of faith. I need to do what appears to be the harder version of this that actually turns out to be the only version of this. I have never remembered right away what I am supposed to do because my brain does not hold information as solidly as I would prefer. Either that or my mind is purposefully forgetting how to do this in order to allow myself the joy of realizing what to do the first time, every time. Well done, Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. This is the perfect puzzle for my addled brain. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I cannot pass the opportunity to expand upon this here. Nothing sets my heart aflame than playing a game, seeing the gameplay suddenly stop, to be treated with the most delicious prize, the CG cutscene. Big studio games just don't do this anymore. When the story calls for it, Blood Omen Legacy of Kain pulls back a velvet curtain and gloriously presents these pixelated stick figures that resemble the in-game characters about as much as stunt doubles in Star Trek the original series. It's cinematic while still feeling like a video game. My heart simply does not beat to the rhythms of the integrated cinematics of many modern games. I don't want to present myself as someone who prefers all aspects of the art form of gaming from the time of my youth. I have grown to adore 60 frames per second and 4K visuals. I am blown away by the innovations in new genres and sequels to long-cherished game religions. The ease in which I can now add mods to computer games is astonishing. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain is probably the least sexy vampire story of all time. Sure, we can allow ourselves to see all the sucking going on through the lens of eroticism, and there are certainly a lot of bones in this game, but Kain does not show any romantic or sexual interest in anyone. In fact, nobody does. Vampire stories are often replete with mysterious and alluring strangers, decadence, and desire. Vampires are portrayed as seductive, their world of darkness counterbalanced with boundless pleasure. And Blood Omen is about a miserable nobleman who uses a big sword to transform living beings into chunks of themselves. He would love Fallout. Blood Omen is one of the most carnage-soaked bloodbaths ever committed to the art of video games. I enjoy a sexy vampire as much as anyone else, but it is refreshing to see a vampire story that just goes all in on the blood-sucking nature of the beast, and abandon the more alluring aspects of this folkloric monster on the side of the road. Blood Omen jettisons the romantic vampire into space, and catapults the sexy vampire into the sun. It is unsexy, unattractive, uncompromising in its icky, sticky malevolence. Once I got the spell that lets Kain multi-suck everyone around him, I basically never stopped using it. This spell expends a lot of magic power, but it's worth it for the effect alone. The downside of the Flame Sword is that it scorches everyone too badly to be meals for Kain, but it's so tempting to use. I love fire. This game gets me. I used the Flame Sword to burn the future version of Kain because eating myself would be too much. I have standards, I have principles.
Aye, you have seen my plan, vampire, as I've seen your destiny. The future says you die.
But I am dead. As are you.
As the game wraps itself up, the player is given two options, two endings, a good ending and a bad ending. Save Nosgoth or Doom Nosgoth. I must admit that this feels almost too straightforward. I would have preferred the two endings to happen more organically. Perhaps there could have been a series of decisions Kain could make throughout the game that would push him towards one ending or another. The player need not agonize over this decision the way Kain might, because after choosing one ending and seeing the chosen cinematic, the player can just immediately load the last save and see the other cinematic. The game presents the player with the option to save the game right before the decision, not even right before the final boss, immediately before Ariel tells Kain about the decision he must make. I don't remember which ending I originally chose when I played this game back in 1996, but I do remember instantly loading the game and seeing the other ending. I did that this time as well. I chose what I now know is the canonical bad ending first, and then checked out the non-canon good ending just for kicks. Blood Omen: Legacy of Kain was a transformative experience for me, allowing me to think of video games differently than I had before. Yet, to this day, I have not played most of the Kain games. I played Blood Omen 2 years later, but I did not play the two games in between, Soul Reaver or Soul Reaver 2, and I never played Defiance either. I also never played that online game, didn't even know it existed until just now. I couldn't find the time, you know how it is. Soul Reaver and its sequel are getting remastered and re-released, and it might be time to give these a try. A little Christmas present from me to me. Merry Vae Victus, one and all. Hi everyone. If you want to support what I do, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment under this video. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/renegadecut. I'll see you soon.